This episode of Railway takes us into Africa. Zimbabwe is the country where we begin a 1,600-kilometer train tour with its final destination in the southern neighboring country of South Africa, the original home of our train. This is a luxurious train, given the worthy name of Pride of Africa. It carries us past wilderness parks, wonders of the world, endless landscapes, and colonial cities. It will be a journey through an overwhelming country on board a train that every rail enthusiast dreams of. The journey begins at the spectacular Victoria Falls, one of the 7 wonders of the world. In the distance, you can catch a glimpse of a bridge, which is the railway connection between Zimbabwe and Zambia. The bridge was built at this impossible point so that train passengers could experience the sensation of the waterfalls. From the train, one looks into the unbridled depths, to the point where the Zambezi River widens to as much as 1,700 meters. The gently flowing water accumulates into immense whirlpools that then fall into the 107-meter deep ravine. Together, the various waterfalls encompass more than 1.5 kilometers and create an overwhelming sight. If there is one place where the insignificance of man is felt, then it might be here. The amount of water that falls here is enormous, 545 million liters per minute in the rainy season. The power of the downpour causes part of the water to splash up again, which creates a continual mysterious mist in the area. The surrounding area benefits from this. In addition to enjoying the Victoria Falls, tourists can wander for hours through the tropical green rainforest. And anyone who looks into the horizon every now and then will discover the colorful rainbow that looks down upon the impressive waterworks. The Zambezi River is not only a major tourist attraction because of its waterfalls. Gutsy sports enthusiasts can also go rafting or bungee jumping here. Hikers can go on adventurous hiking tours, and wildlife lovers can spot wild animals along the riverbanks while on a river cruise. Anyone who would rather hang out for the day and has the financial means can check in at the famous Victoria Falls Hotel. Built in 1904 and completely restored and decorated in Old English style some years ago, this is a wonderful place to pleasantly pass the time. The high elevation guarantees a beautiful view all around, and the luxurious accommodations and attentive staff ensure that even the most exhausted guest can unwind. And to imagine that this was once nothing more than a simple wooden structure without running water, gas, and electricity. Reluctantly, we leave behind this luxurious resort. The Pride of Africa awaits us. At the beautifully maintained station of Victoria Falls, we soon discover that we will be pampered during our train journey as well. While the local passengers lug their merchandise, the foreign train passengers are greeted with a glass of champagne. A delightful foreshadowing of the luxury that Rovos Rail has in store for us. After everyone has finished his glass and has been personally escorted to his carriage, the journey can begin. The Pride of Africa not only owes its fame to its extraordinary luxury, but also to the fact that the train is pulled by a steam locomotive. For this stretch of the journey, however, we'll be pulled by a diesel from the Zimbabwe Railway, since our route goes through a dry landscape which is prone to fires. For this reason, the use of a steam locomotive is prohibited here. Full of expectation, the travelers seat themselves on the train's open-air balcony and in the cozy lounge that was built in one of the 19 carriages. Most of these date back to the 20s and 30s and have been meticulously restored. We set course for the Hwange National Park, the largest wildlife reserve in Zimbabwe, situated south of the Victoria Falls. While the train races ahead, the sun sets and daylight gives way to the night. We're now riding through the wildlife area, but it's too dark to see the animals, who are grazing or preparing for the hunt. We'll have to wait till morning. The Hwange National Park, with its 14,000 square kilometers, is one of the largest wildlife reserves in southern Africa and one of the major tourist attractions in Zimbabwe. Set up in 1929, the area was at that time still part of the territory of the San Bushmen, who had lived and hunted here. Now, only wildlife has the exclusive right to live here. In Hwange Park, over 100 different animal species and 400 kinds of birds have found a protected habitat. A 482-kilometer route leads to the places where the animals are most likely to stay. The intense African heat, often unpaved paths, and intense gazing for wildlife can make game drives exhausting. But the sight of the wild animals in the open nature is unforgettable and worth every hardship. The best time to see the wildlife is during the dry season, when the foliage is sparse and when animals can be seen at or near the watering holes in the daytime. During game drives, anyone who is fortunate can come across herds of over 100 elephants, because Hwange Park is also one of the largest protected elephant habitats in the world. As in most African wildlife parks, there are sufficient accommodations in the Hwange National Park as well, varying from luxurious lodges with all the facilities to simple tents or caravans. We choose a happy medium and stay in the Linkwasha Wilderness Camp. Here we stay in traditional huts, which are plain but decorated comfortably. Anyone who stays here should not be too accustomed to pampering. Washing is done standing at the sink, and going to the toilet is done in the brisk open air. During the day, this is no problem at all, but in the dark, images are soon conjured up of hungry lions lurking about. The primitive circumstances in the camp, no electricity and running water, sometimes lead to especially creative solutions for day-to-day problems. Like, for example, how do you take a hot shower? Like this. Cooking is also done in a simple manner. Using a makeshift oven, the tastiest dishes are prepared. A perfect finish to an adventurous day in the wilderness. We trade in the sobriety of the bush for the luxury of the train and continue on our way to Bulawayo. The route Victoria Falls-Bulawayo was completed in the late 19th century and was part of a railway line that was supposed to run from Cape Town to Cairo. This railway line was the initiative and vision of Cecil John Rhodes, the English settler who annexed African land with brutal force and gave Zimbabwe its colonial name, Rhodesia. The thousands of kilometers of railway track turned out to be an unattainable utopia and was never realized. But the tracks that are laid down here are heavily traveled, not only by tourists, but especially by the inhabitants who busily commute back and forth between the cities and the country. On the way to Bulawayo lies a route that was once the longest stretch of straight track in the world, 112 kilometers. The construction of the railway lines in this area was certainly not without risk. One needed to determine the route crawling through the dense brush, leaving workers as easy prey for wild animals. A strange thought for those who now look out the window. We arrive in Bulawayo, the second largest city in the country, and the headquarters of Zimbabwe Railways. Bulawayo has been called the country's best-kept secret. It has only been in the last few years that tourists have found their way to this appealing city, which conjures up memories of its colonial past with its old English architecture. Not that the past is so pleasant. Cecil John Rhodes obtained his mining concessions in this city from King Longengula of Nibale, only to declare war sometime afterwards and to annex the region. The native population was run off the land to make room for the Cape Town-Cairo railway line. Thankfully, nothing remains from that terrible past. Instead, with its wide streets and beautifully maintained buildings, Bulawayo exerts a cosmopolitan but friendly ambience. The luxurious residences and office buildings of yesteryear now house several notable museums. Souvenir hunters have plenty of opportunity at a small market where the locals show off their productivity in the form of arts and crafts. Wicker baskets, colorful hand-painted bowls and dishes, detailed wood carvings, something for everyone here, although not everything can fit in the suitcase. But even those who aren't in the buying mood can also enjoy this market. The atmosphere is typically African, open, colorful, and friendly. While we're still deciding between the wooden giraffe and the elephant, a steam locomotive is at the station warming up. This locomotive will replace the diesel train for the next stretch of our journey. The pride of Africa and its passengers are ready for departure. Still one last test of strength, and then the steam locomotive pulls away, with lots of noise and lots of steam. This part of the journey brings us across the border to Germiston, a small place near the South African capital of Johannesburg. Here our steam locomotive from the Zimbabwe railways will be replaced by the #1 locomotive of the South African Rovos Rail. On the way, we make a brief stop for minor maintenance work on the steam locomotive. While the passengers are inside enjoying a cocktail, the maintenance crew, traveling in a separate carriage, is hard at work. Water is added, used coal is removed, gauges are checked, and nuts and bolts shaken loose are tightened. And just like that, the locomotive is ready to steam again. The route Bulawayo-Germiston is the second to last stretch in our 1,600-kilometer journey. We ride to the South African border and continue to travel on to Germiston. The attentive traveler sees scattered patches of black scorched brush alongside the rails. This is due to the steam from the steam locomotives, which sometimes cause small brush fires. Although the use of steam locomotives in Zimbabwe is still very common, they're being replaced more and more by diesels, partly because of this fire hazard. Evening is approaching over the last tip of Zimbabwe. In the train, the guests have changed out of their safari clothing into a dinner jacket and dress, the only occasion during this luxury train journey that requires proper attire. The dinner is served in a dining car, in a carriage that was built in 1924. It is one of the showpieces of this train, with its hand-carved woodwork and trappings in typically Victorian style. The dining car seats 44 guests, who can treat themselves to a perfectly prepared meal and excellent South African wines. This is how time passes on this long journey, while the train slips further into the dark African night.
Yeah, sometimes no, thank you, not for me.
The evenings on Rovos' special train gives us an opportunity to relax and get to know the many travelers from all over the world who've come to share this lovely journey. In the morning, we let our eyes soak up the South African landscape, which we've been traveling through for the past few hours. High barriers fence off the various wildlife parks that are located in this northern province. It's already afternoon as we ride into the Germiston station. There's a flurry of activity, tourists waiting for their connections, and local residents eagerly selling fresh fruit to hungry travelers. And then the moment arrives that every steam locomotive enthusiast has waited for, the link-up with Rovos Rail's #1 locomotive. Polished in every detail by a train-loving workforce, it shines with pride awaiting departure. It's clear where this train gets its title, Pride of Africa. This steam locomotive, with the curious name of Tiffany, was built in 1893. When the current owner bought it, it had been out of commission at a small station for a long time. In 1987, orders were given to get it riding again. After the interior was also restored, it became one of the showpieces of Rovos Rail. This locomotive is one of the 4 steam locomotives that pull the Pride of Africa. Except for Tiffany, these were all found in the junkyard and were saved just in time from becoming scrap metal. The Pride of Africa starts the last stretch of our journey. A short trip of about 2 hours brings us to the final destination of Pretoria. Pretoria is the administrative capital of South Africa and also the seat of President Nelson Mandela. This million-plus city is moreover the point of departure for most of the train tours of Rovos Rail. From this station, the luxury trains ride to domestic locations like Kruger National Park and Cape Town, but also to places like Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, a journey of more than 6,000 kilometers, clear across Africa. But we end our trip here, with many memories of a unique journey. Next episode of Rail Away, we'll take the luxurious South Orient Express through the pines and gorges of famous Copper Canyon on our way through the magical country of Mexico.